I've got about somewhere between 400 and 500,000 Star Wars items in my collection. Guinness approached us in 2013, and by 2014, we were in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's largest Star Wars memorabilia collection. And we have plans ahead to combine 4 major Star Wars collections into a new all-purpose Star Wars museum called the Saga Museum of Star Wars Memorabilia. Hello.
Steve, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And so I also, before we get started, I do want to say it is such a pleasure to talk to you because as a child of the 70s, I guess, in the 80s and 90s, having the Tomart's Guide to Star Wars Figures was like the book on my bookshelf. And I finally Googled today who is Tomart because I was like, who is this German guy? I imagined he was German. I don't know. But because of the book, I always saw your name. And so your name is synonymous with collecting for me.
Some people have blamed me for that. Not thanked me.
Well, I thank you. It was always a pleasure going through that book, looking at the action figures, dreaming of the prices. Yeah, it's a lot of great memories with that. Because back in the 90s, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff to, like the early 90s, not a whole lot of stuff to do.
Sure wasn't.
Steve, tell us, are you ready to share with the world what does Star Wars mean?
I think so.
Oh, I hope so.
Yes.
Okay, so our Five with the Force kickoff. Which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
Well, it goes back and forth between Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. For years, I would say The Empire Strikes Back, but the more I think about it, without the original Star Wars, now called Episode 4, A New Hope, there wouldn't have been everything else that has followed for nearly 50 years. So Star Wars introduced us to Obi-Wan, and this is Rancho Obi-Wan, not Rancho Jar Jar. So I really appreciate the inventiveness and the creativity and the passion that went into the first Star Wars movie.
Yeah, great
Sure.
answer. Dave, will you roll a d6 for me?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. 4.
Oh, okay. Who is your favorite droid?
My favorite droid would be R2-D2, although Chopper has come up strong in the last few years.
Yeah.
But R2 allegedly was the hero of Star Wars by some telling. And, I knew Kenny Baker, who was inside R2 and spun the dome and walked the walk occasionally. And the mechanics of R2 and the fandom around R2-D2 started the R2 Builders, which is now branched out into every possible droid imaginable in the Star Wars universe. But R2 was there at the beginning.
Yeah.
Love that. The OG.
The OG droid, yep.
What is your favorite line to quote?
Do or do not, there is no try.
I like that.
Sure.
Yep.
Star Wars is amazingly quotable, especially the original trilogy.
Yeah.
But these days, even the prequel trilogy has given us a lot of quotes as the worldwide situation and geopolitics has changed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's how democracy dies.
We're watching it in real time. Dave will probably cut that out. Besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content?
Well, my favorite Star Wars content besides the movies would have to be Star Wars collectibles. I've got about somewhere between 400 and 500,000 Star Wars items in my collection.
Yeah.
Guinness approached us in 2013, and by 2014, we were in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's largest Star Wars memorabilia collection. And we have plans ahead to combine 4 major Star Wars collections into a new all-purpose Star Wars museum called the Saga Museum of Star Wars Memorabilia.
Yeah. We're very excited to dive into that with you. And I think our listeners will be as well. We met some of your counterparts last year at Emerald City Comic-Con and then had them on the show.
We had Lisa and Vic on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah. The Saga Museum, we're big fans, very excited to chat about that. last of our 5 with the Force, what is the item in your collection that people are surprised to see or have the biggest reaction to?
That's a good question. There's a couple of different items. One is a circular acrylic display case that houses all the original action figures mint on cards, many of which have Toys R Us stickers still on them. And they are guarded at the bottom by 575 Kenner Hasbro Stormtroopers. This was made for us by an outside company working for Target. We did a small exhibit for Target in Los Angeles for the opening weekend of The Force Awakens. And it was open to the public for free.
Wow.
And they built us some display cases in this amazing circular display case housing the action figures.
Wow.
So people's eyes bug out when they see that.
Well, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I always talk on the show about how I'm such a big fan of packaging, and those, like the original carded figures on the package, are just to me the golden idol of Star Wars collecting.
Well, it's amazing they've kept up that look after going to different looks over the years. Hasbro has come back to the twin railroad track, racetrack look of the cards and selling them mainly to adult collectors these days.
That's crazy.
And I'm so glad that they did come back around to that, because that's what got me into like loving Star Wars figures is that, like, the picture of the character from the movie, the racetrack that you described, it's so perfect to me.
It's cool stuff.
Yes. So I want to talk about your Star Wars journey a little bit from 1977 and on. When we were researching your background, I was really surprised that you started out as a journalist. And you were working in Los Angeles. I believe you were working in Los Angeles when Star Wars came out in 1977. Usually our very first question to people is what introduced you to Star Wars, and can you take us through that? But I really want to ask you before that, I want to do a prequel question to that, which is, in the lead up to Star Wars, what was it? What can you describe what the general atmosphere in the world was like? What how Star Wars was perceived before it was coming out, and what led you to go see it for the first time?
Well, I had a 30-year career as a journalist, 26 of them at the Wall Street Journal, and the last bunch of years in Los Angeles. So the first I heard about Star Wars was a story in the Los Angeles Times Sunday calendar section the summer before Star Wars came out. And it was by their film critic. And he had gone over to England and had visited the set of Star Wars and had written about, the guy who made American Graffiti is now making this space epic. And who knows what this is going to be. This like tall furry creatures named Wookiees and spacecraft and planets. And I mean, it was intriguing enough. I grew up loving science fiction and the real world space program. And I had started to collect space toys, both battery operated and wind up rockets and robots from Japan, tin toys, plastic toys, Buck Rogers, Major Matt Mason, Star Trek. I had a big Star Trek collection. So I was looking forward to this. And in the spring of 1977, a marketing brochure for Star Wars to try to entice theater bookers to rent Star Wars for their movie theaters came to the media and came to the office of the Wall Street Journal in LA and went to the movie reporter, the Hollywood beat reporter, and he was looking at it, and I passed by his desk and saw it, and then he threw it away into his wastebasket. So I waited till he left for the day, tiptoed over to the wastebasket, and rescued it.
Yes.
Along with the outside cardboard carton, and I still have that. So that was one of my first Star Wars collectibles.
I love that.
I was about to say, and quite the first one, because I'm sure not a lot survived the summer of 76.
Yeah, that was in 77.
Oh, 77, sorry.
Yeah, well, I still have the newspaper clip, too, from 76.
Wow.
But the media, they did a mass media screening of Star Wars in the back lot of 20th Century Fox 10 days before it opened to the public, 10 days before May 25th. And it was in the Darrell F. Zanuck Theater on the back lot. And I was there with a bunch of my colleagues and a bunch of media from other radio and TV and newspapers. And I still remember looking up as the Star Destroyer came overhead and looking at the ceiling along with everybody else in there saying, where the heck is that coming from? And was hooked immediately and loved the movie, had a lot of fun at the movie, and immediately afterwards went up to the PR guy and asked for my screening ticket back. So
you have always been a collector.
I've been a collector all my life. I collected baseball cards, comic books, bread loaf labels that were big collectibles back in the 50s and 60s.
Oh.
So yeah, I've had the collector gene in me.
Was there? I feel as though before Star Wars, collectors weren't as common as every day. Is that kind of true, or am I just making stuff up because I wasn't alive?
You're absolutely right. Pop culture collectibles were a small thing up until Star Wars, just as the licensing of merchandise from movies and TV shows were a small thing. There had never been a very successful license of movies. There have been some licenses of TV shows like The $6 Million Man and Planet of the Apes and Star Trek that had been pretty successful. But licensing was a $6 million a year business in 1976, and it is today a $330 billion a year business.
Jesus.
And Star Wars really jump-started that business.
And do you still have those, like the Star Treks and the Flash Gordon in the earlier toy collection that you started?
No, I have very little of that. I've sold it all off over the years to pay for Star Wars collectibles. So there's always that trade involved of you can't have everything. You can want to have everything. I consider myself a completist, but that today means only that I love everything, almost everything, but I can't afford or have space for everything, even though the museum, Rancho Obi-Wan, is 7,000 square feet and our offsite storage area is 9,000 square feet, and it is full. Both places are full.
Wow.
There's so many things to talk about. What was your reaction to Star Wars? Obviously, you went up to the ticket taker and asked for your ticket back so that you could hold on to it. What was there anything specifically about the movie that was like hit you to the core?
Well, as I said, I grew up reading a lot of science fiction novels and fantasy, and it just took me to another place. It was a wonderful, working at the Wall Street Journal, even back in those days, could be a very stressful experience. Breaking news, working on front page feature stories at that time that you could spend weeks or months on. There was always something going on. So to have that free time to just sort of feed my passion for science fiction fantasy and seeing that wonderful movie and wondering at the end, was there going to be another one? It seems to be that they're making the case that there could be another movie. I wonder, that would be great. I wonder if they're going to do any toys, any merchandise, and add it to the space toy collection. So all these thoughts are going through my mind, but I just was so enthused with seeing the movie.
How were you introduced to the toys? Like, were you keeping an eye out for them? Like, one of my favorite things about collecting is the hunt, where you just kind of go to stores and stores and stores until you find something you're looking for. 77, they had the early bird kit come out that promised toys, I forget, at Christmas time for the following spring. What was some of the toys that were first in your collection? And how did you start the snowball going down the hill that turned into the mammoth snowball that is your collection now?
Well, the giant snowball came years later, but it started in 77. Going to toy stores, I had a habit of going to toy stores at least once a week to look for space toys and robots and things like that. There was something called the Hollywood Toy Shop on Hollywood Boulevard There was something in the Los Feliz area of Los Angeles where I live called Mena Toys. Somehow I missed the early bird kit, and I don't know how, but I found it in going to a toy store in January of the following year, and they still had some. And I looked at the date. You had to send in the coupon by December 31st of 77, and this was 1978. So I said, can I get a discount on that? No. I bought it anyway.
Yeah. Are you someone who opens their toys, or are you a mint in package person, or somewhere in between?
Somewhere in between, mostly mint in package. I opened my first 12 action figures and put them on the shelf with the other space toys, with some blue tack underneath all their feet. I still have the cards and those figures with the open bubble that I opened very carefully. And then I went to replace the first 12 figures. I had a dealer friend who I said, can you put together a set for me of the original 12 figures as mint as possible on the card? And he did, and he only took cash. I went down to his shop in Southern California, a beach community, and spent just about all the cash that I had on me, saving some for gas to go home, and got the first 12 figures. And he said, I've got this other weird piece that I thought you might be interested in. This is way before the internet or anybody was writing about Star Wars collectibles or even thought of them as collectibles. And he pulled out this Jawa, and it had a vinyl cape, unlike the Jawas that I knew that had cloth capes.
Yes.
Well, it turns out that the vinyl cape Jawa, I said, was that made by a fan or something? He said, no, it's original. Turns out the vinyl cape Jawa was the first, but it wasn't selling because parents who bought most of the figures thought it was the same price as the twice the size figures. And it looked cheap with the vinyl cape, so they thought that they would spruce it up by putting a cloth cape on it. So I said, well, how much do you want for that? And he said, well, I need to get $45 for it. And I said, I paid you $185 for 12 figures, and you want 45 extra for this? I said, I'll pass. Went out to my car, put the key in the door, and thought, well, I may not get another chance quickly to get this. So I went back in, gave him the $45, which was my gas money. So I was worried that I wouldn't make it home in time and that I would run out of gasoline. I made it just barely to a gas station. And I think they took credit cards even back then. And I got the Jawa, which now goes for thousands of dollars in the condition that I got it in. Unpunched and in pretty mint condition.
Were you... That is an incredible find, but I also really admire that, like, to me at least, as someone who's collected for the past 30 to 40 years, to have the foresight to kind of know an unpunched card is a little better. These are things that I think are standard in collecting today. Did you feel that those were standard back then, or was that something you were, like, for lack of a better term, on the forefront of?
As far as I knew, I was the only person in the world who was buying Star Wars as a collection. And to put it away and to do what with it, I had no idea. Not to make money, that's for sure. But as we were talking about, collectibles were not a big thing back then. It's only after Star Wars came out and after really into the 90s when people who grew up with Star Wars, kids who grew up with Star Wars, had disposable income. And I did a book that came out in 1992 called Star Wars From Concept to Screen to Collectible, which had lots of pictures and lots of information about prototypes and pre-production items and sort of expanded what was findable out there. And it got a lot of people blame me again for starting them along this path where they have spent all of their disposable income over the last 30 or 40 years on Star Wars items. But it wasn't a big thing. In fact, I was doing a toy show as a dealer to get in early and also to see what people had. And I got a call from the promoter one day in the 80s and saying, we've got two dealers who want to come in and they want to sell Star Wars stuff, but that's new in the store. This is probably about 85, 86 when the stores were completely devoid of Star Wars items.
Yeah.
And I said, no, that stuff's become collectible. People are looking for that stuff. So I got them into the show. They became good friends. And I found lots of stuff that they had gotten from their sources. So it was one of those kinds of situations. I became friendly with a lot of the dealers, got stuff from other countries, started to look into bootlegs of Star Wars items, action figures, got some of those from people. Things were developing around the time that I was developing my collection.
Yeah, I kind of remember back like 92 is about when I started going, hey, maybe I should start buying these up because they were more available back then.
Yeah.
Like at comic book stores.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Did you?
No, I was going to make a bad joke. I was like, I wasn't even born yet.
All the time.
Okay, for you.
Yeah.
But I was a victim of I loved the Toys R Us drop that you made earlier because that's how I got all my Star Wars figures as a kid.
Yeah.
Because we would go to Toys R Us and we would scour the aisles for the ones I didn't yet have, and then with every new movie release for the prequels, of course, like that meant an uptick in visits to Toys R Us. And then I think I went off to college and there was a garage sale that I was not present at, and off they went. So I've been rebuilding.
That's a story I hear a lot.
It's not an original story, yeah.
You were mentioning the books you had written, and I do have somewhat of a snarky question, but also a genuine question, which is how back in the 90s, you're one of the few like uber collectors of Star Wars. Someone who really has an idea of the market out there, of what people were looking for, what was unique. How did you determine the prices in some way? Did you look at the prices, or was that more of like what the market was telling you? How when there's a new kind of hobby out there, how do you determine the prices? I guess is my question.
Well, that's interesting. It's really before the internet became very popular, which wasn't until the mid 90s and later. So that was information that you had to develop yourself. There was a publication called Toy Shop, which came out twice a month. It was a very thick in the beginning tabloid newspaper that was filled with toy ads, and there were people advertising Star Wars toys in it and other kinds of Star Wars items. And so I would get some ideas from that, as well as filling my collection with things. Before that, there was something called TKRP, which was a subscription to a catalog service done by a disc jockey in the Mideast. I think he was from Kentucky, a guy named Tom Kennedy, who wanted to buy Star Wars things himself and figured out that if he could put together large orders for manufacturers, they would sell to him, and then he could sell off the items he didn't need for his own collection and make some money, but also get things cheaper.
Yes.
And so that went through 1984, and I would get an idea of prices from that, from Toy Shop, and from just visiting toy shows and seeing what prices dealers were charging for things. And the prices for action figures were done by my colleague on the book, T.N. Tumbush, and they put together the action figure and Kenner sections. I put together everything else by basically listing everything I had in my collection at the time, which was a lot even back then, because it was a fairly thick book on things besides the action figures and Kenner toys.
Do you know when that transition between, because you said that it was a lot back then, and earlier you said that the giant snowball had kind of came later. When was that transition from like, I'm collecting this to I have a monstrous, like a world record breaking collection?
Well, the giant snowball hit me personally in the late 80s. Three of the major collectors in the U.S., one who was clearly had the largest U.S. collection of Star Wars, he lived in Western Pennsylvania. And in fact, Kenner had used him. They borrowed some of his out-of-box toys for an exhibit at Toy Fair International, the retailer show in New York City. And he and the two other collectors were all getting divorced sometime in the mid-late 80s. Gosh. And they had to break up their collections to value it for the divorce settlement. Oh. And so I bought chunks of each of those three collections, including a major chunk of what started my poster collection, several hundred Star Wars posters, commercial posters, advertising posters. This guy had made all the effort to go after stores and retailers and things like that to get posters that related to Star Wars in his collection. So, and international posters. So I started out with big chunks of these three collections.
Wow.
The real snowball hit everybody when Episode 1 came out in 1999. Mm-hmm. The movie that was severely over-merchandised. You could find Star Wars in gasoline stations.
Yes.
I think crematories and everywhere you would think or not think.
The grocery store, yeah.
Oh, definitely grocery stores.
Although
hardware stores.
Hardware stores, yes. Yeah.
I do want to note for any future listeners or fans that if I could have a Star Wars urn when I pass, that would be great.
Well, there are Star Wars tombstones.
Oh, wow.
When I was head of fan relations at Lucasfilm, people would write us and saying, my son or daughter was a huge Star Wars fan and they've passed away. Could I put the image of R2-D2 and C-3PO on their tombstone? And we'd always grant permission. Yeah. There are Star Wars wheelchairs that are licensed. There are Star Wars hospital gowns for kids that are done by a charity that gives them away to kids. So there's all kinds of Star Wars items out there. And I'm sure the royal we, that Lucasfilm would approve a Star Wars urn if they were asked. They don't have to be asked. They wouldn't do anything about it negatively.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that there's a lot of items out there, and this question just popped into my head, which is, do you have a rosebud? Like, is there one particular item in your collection that really kind of brings you joy?
That I'm still looking for.
Whether you have it or still looking for it. I guess, yeah, in Rosebud, he was looking for that.
I was going to say, he's still looking for it, yeah. That's an interesting question, too, though. What are you still looking for? So maybe both.
Well, there's something really silly that I'm still looking for. So back in the 90s, before I moved to Northern California, I was at a charity fundraiser for the Los Angeles Zoo. And it was an outdoor fundraiser, and there were lots of vendors there. And from a distance, I spied what looked like a three-dimensional Chewbacca painting. And I got closer, and it looked fuzzy. And I went over and said, how do you make this? And he said, well, we sweep up hair from a barbershop floor, and then we glue it onto and my stomach did a flip-flop. Yeah. And I thought, I'll pass. But I regret that to this day, and I've had a 30-year search for a Star Wars hair Chewbacca painting on eBay. Wow. Because if anybody asks what the tackiest thing in the collection is, I could have easily pointed them to that. Yeah. Now it's harder.
Might be able to make your own.
I don't want to sweep up my hair from the barbershop floor.
Have people send you clippings? Oh. Bad joke, sorry.
It was really very strange. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah.
I think it's now I should say, please do not send hair clippings to Sansweet, or what does Star Wars mean to you?
Yeah.
One of the things in doing research about you that really impressed me is that you're a self-starter, or at least that's what I took away from research. When you were a kid, you hand-printed and sold a newsletter in your neighborhood for 3 cents. In the 80s, you were a lecturer of business journalism at USC in a teaching course that you created, if I have that correct.
Yes.
And then in 1996, you left the Wall Street Journal to become the director of specialty marketing at Lucasfilm, turning your hobby into a change in career. And from my point of view, you kind of self-created all those moments. Is there a secret to that? Do you have advice on that? Like,
follow your bliss, as a very famous author once said, Joseph Campbell.
Yes.
Who's sort of George's guru. George studied Campbell's mythology in college in his filmmaking course. And it was time for me to leave the journal after 26 years and do something else. I had been bureau chief for 9 years, so I had overstayed my welcome by about 6 years. The normal length of time for a bureau chief was about 3 years, but I loved doing what I was doing so much. And they wanted me to move on and become an editor in New York, or start a regional edition of the journal, or become a super reporter. None of that interested me. And one day I got a call from the head of publicity at Lucasfilm saying, Steve, we want to know if you know anybody who might want to take a 1 year only job to go out and talk to fans about the special editions coming up. And I said, let's talk.
Yeah.
And so that 1 year, they just forgot to get rid of me for 15 years.
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to that self-starting thing. They opened the door and you were like, I'm in now.
Well, and I never had the official title of head of fan relations. That was something that I created myself. Specialty marketing really didn't include that, but fan relations, and then helping set up the first Star Wars celebration and working on those through the time that I left Lucasfilm. So, yeah, there are lots of interesting pathways that I could have taken.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was determined to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Follow your bliss.
As Darth Vader might say, impressive. Most impressive. Over the years, you've written several books about Lucasfilm, or about Star Wars, and for Lucasfilm. 17. And some of that you did while working at Lucasfilm, but I feel like you did a couple before. Is that true? Do I have that?
Yeah, the Star Wars from concept to screen to collectible came out in 92. I didn't join Lucasfilm until 96. Both Tomart guides were pre-Lucasfilm, and I started working on the encyclopedia before Lucasfilm, although it took about a year to write.
How were you first introduced to Lucasfilm? I guess is what I'm getting. Like, how did you start a relationship with Lucasfilm? Well,
I first contacted Lucasfilm probably in 1987 because I wanted to do a column for the journal on the 10th anniversary of Star Wars, and I wanted to see Skywalker Ranch. So I called the head of publicity, who I eventually ended up working with, Lynn Hale, who is an amazing person, and said that I wanted to interview George and do a 10-year column for the journal. And she said, well, I'll see if he can do it, if he's interested, and I'll get back to you. And I said, I'd be happy to come up to Skywalker. And she got back to me and said, George would be happy to give you half an hour on the phone. And I said, well, I'd be happy to come up on the phone. So I never got to Skywalker Ranch at that point. And then in the 90s, I had heard through the grapevine, through some dealers, that Lucasfilm was considering doing a price guide. And I called Lynn again, and I said, who would I talk to? And she said, well, we've just restarted our publications division, and you should talk to a lady named Lucy Wilson. So I called her, we had this discussion. I said, I understand about the price guide, and I should do it. And she said, and you are who? And I explained and talked to her about that. She said, what I really want is a price guide with anecdotes. And I said, you can't do that. It doesn't work. A price guide is a price guide, and a book with anecdotes is a separate book. And out of that came From Concept to Screen to Collectible, which gave me a lot of excitement. And it was a fun book to work on, to interview the Kenner people and to talk to the ILM people who were involved with the original movies. And I had a 2-hour interview with George in his office at the ranch.
Finally.
Follow your bliss.
Yes.
And then worked with Tom Tumbush and his son T.N. Tumbush on the 2 versions of the price guides. Started selling them on QVC. They liked what I did on QVC when I was a guest. So I eventually did 50 hours of QVC as the second banana, working for Lucasfilm Originally, while I was still at the Wall Street Journal, and the first time I was on, they introduced me as being the Wall Street Journal bureau chief. Wall Street Journal didn't appreciate that. They said, "We don't mind you doing it, but please don't say you're from the Wall Street Journal." It's not the right audience.
Yeah, they were wrong, but I get it. I understand.
Yeah. As long as you're not forbidding me from doing the shows.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've talked a lot about collecting, obviously. What do you think drives people to collect?
I think some of it is reliving childhood. Some of it is buying something that they buy just for fun. Some of it is completing a series, a collection. There are 12 plates in this collection, and you want to get all 12 of them.
Yeah.
So there are a number of different reasons why people collect. And people collect all sorts of things. I collected matchbook covers as a kid without the matches in them because that would burn the house down on them.
What's the latest piece that you've added to the collection?
Let's see. Did the mail come yet?
Yeah.
Is it that frequent?
I could get. Last week I got 5 packages on 5 days.
Wow.
I've been buying lots of posters. Okay. Got about 6,000 plus posters in the collection now. Star Wars posters.
Wow.
So ever since Mondo came along, and now Bottleneck Gallery, and they have frequent releases of artist posters that are licensed by Lucasfilm and Disney. My favorite new licensee is Regal Robot, which has done replicas of the actual maquettes that were used to make aliens and ships and creatures for the movies. Especially, there were a lot of maquettes by the time Return of the Jedi came around. There were lots of maquettes of the characters and the creatures that George wanted. And George would use his maquettes to decide. First, there would be art, flat art, 2D art. And he would say, well, I'd like the eyes on that one and the nose on that one and the mouth on that one. Then they would sculpt it, and he'd say, that's just about right, but let's try something like this. And to have those 3D scan from the archives is pretty amazing. I love that.
That is amazing. Wow.
I like the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Well, one of the strangest things in my collection is a foot cast from a stuntman in Return of the Jedi. He was one of Jabba's bad guys and fell into the Sarlacc pit. And then the stunt double for Billy D. Williams, Lando, fell on top of him and broke his leg. So this foot cast was signed by Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Kenny Baker, and a bunch of other people. And I ended up trading somebody because I loved the foot cast and his Blue Harvest ID badge.
Perfect.
And a letter. He ended up being an extra or played a cameo as an Imperial scientist in Rogue One.
Oh, wow.
And we've become friends. He's British, but we've become internet friends.
That's cool. The modern day pen pal.
Yes.
Cast pal, I think would be.
Cast pal.
Yeah. The cast pal. I like that.
I want to talk a little bit about the Saga Museum.
Yeah.
And can you briefly walk us through what the Saga Museum is and who the other collectors involved are?
So the Saga Museum is to combine 4 major collections of Star Wars memorabilia. And the people who own these 4 collections are on the board of directors of Rancho Obi-Wan. All of us are getting older. They're looking to what our legacy is. We don't want to auction off our items or sell them. We want to keep them together because that's been our purpose of sharing the collections with other people. And while people have visitors over to their homes or their collection, I'm the only one who really has a working museum where we invite the public to come in and tour. And people can do that by going to ranchoobiwan.org. And we book tours that are very small, 12 people at a time, and our docents give the tours the last 2 or 3 hours on Saturdays and sometimes Fridays once a month. But the Saga Museum was an idea of what do we do with our collections after we're gone, and none of us have children, and relatives that we're leaving other things to wouldn't understand what to do with Star Wars stuff. And so we've been working for the last couple of years on this idea, which we announced publicly a year ago. And the other collectors are Gus Lopez, who probably has the best collection of Star Wars props, costumes, and weapons of anybody, and the best cereal box collection of Star Wars items in the world. He's the Star Wars cereal king. Lisa Stevens and Vic Wertz, who I think you've had on one of your podcasts, who own the Imperial Archives, they designed their house in Washington State, north of Seattle, to have two X-Wings, or maybe one is the X-Wing and one is the, forget. Anyway, they have a huge collection in their house. They built a 10,000 square foot extra building, 2-story building for expansion to their collection.
Yeah.
And the final collector is Duncan Jenkins, who lives in Kansas. And Duncan's collection is called the Smithsonian, and he specializes in international items. So he has a lot of original toys in their foreign packages, and packaging really interests me a lot and excites me to see the different versions of packaging.
Yeah.
And then individual items that were made in countries that were not exported anywhere else.
Wow.
And were hard to find in pre-internet days. So we've covered the waterfront.
Yeah.
How do you view your, what your specialty is within collecting? Could you mention that?
My specialty and what I've really concentrated on in the last 10 or 15 years is art and fan-made items. Artists made in-action figures on the card. I mean, that's become a big thing. Artist figures, decorated Darth Vader and Stormtrooper helmets that were used to raise money for charities, for Make-A-Wish especially. Skateboard decks that are painted by artists that were auctioned off for the 25th or 30th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back. They all had a theme of Empire. So it's items like that, as well as one-of-a-kind paintings. We have the world's largest Star Wars oil painting, a 15-foot by 8-foot painting done by a Canadian artist, Robert Burden, who does amazing stuff. And it's his childhood Star Wars toys. They're all over the place, plus a lot of Easter eggs.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Wow.
It's a beautiful piece. So we've had it on long-term loan here. We're hoping to be able to buy it.
Excellent. Why do you think museums like this are so important for fandom?
Well, it seems to me that Star Wars is going to be around for at least another 50 years. And we want to keep that excitement and the passion going. But Star Wars has become so much a part of the culture that we have editorial cartoonists even today using Darth Vader or Yoda in their editorial cartoons. So even if people haven't seen Star Wars, they know exactly who that is. They know the story of Star Wars. They've heard quotes from Star Wars. And this will be a place for fans to get together. We would have space for events and rental spaces, educational experiences. It'd be wonderful to have people from the original model makers to the CG artists. We just have to pick a city out of our 8 finalists and start fundraising.
Wow.
It's a bit of a difficult environment these days.
Yeah.
To fundraise for a new museum, since so many existing museums are out there trying to keep alive.
Right.
Yeah. And I hope this isn't too forward of me, but imagine a Toys R Us aisle that's 1977, and you just walk and turn into a hallway that's just the 1977 toy aisle with all the figures lining and all the just the boxes of TIE fighters and X-Wings you see in the photographs now. That would be my my pitch to you. And you don't even have to call it the Dave Humphreys aisle. You can just steal that idea.
Well, between our 4 collections, we'll certainly have a number of duplicates, so we can do lots of revolving shows, traveling exhibits.
Yeah.
We usually do an exhibit for the domestic celebration events. We'll do one in 27. And we're hoping to do a pop-up for the 50th anniversary. So we'll see. Cool. We have lots of ideas, so we're not short of those.
No.
Excellent. I'm hopeful that it'll be somewhere close to me and I'll get to go to it once you find your city. It's a great concept, and it is a great, we call it collecting, we call it memorabilia, but it's also history. It's the evolution of marketing. I'm in marketing, so that's fascinating to me.
It's the history of role playing.
Yes.
The history of card games. The history of play patterns.
Yeah.
And how things have gone from physical to digital. So there are all kinds of paths to follow in a museum. All kinds of very exciting paths.
Yes. Just a couple more questions, and we'll land this plane. I do want to ask, there's that, I want to say, I'm not sure when the photograph was taken, but the very famous photograph of George Lucas at Skywalker Ranch in the one room surrounded by all the props. Mm-hmm. Were you ever in that room, and what did you steal?
Well, that was just set up just for the photographs. So there were other people who had their photographs taken at the time there. But George realized the wealth of material he had in that room, and that was the start of the Lucasfilm archives. He said, you know what? We need to set up an archive for all of this material. The Millennium Falcon, the X-Wings, the TIE fighters, some of the stop-action puppets. And so that is a very famous photograph. A lot of what Regal Robot is doing as far as replicas of maquettes comes from their items in that photo. So I've been to the archives, and it's quite an impressive place.
Wow.
What are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
The story, the visual excellence, and the special effects.
What is your favorite Star Wars memory?
My favorite memory would have to be, I did lots of panels at San Diego Comic-Con International over the years after I joined Lucasfilm, the first one in 1996. But my favorite, and one of my favorite memories in fan relations, is standing before the new room that seated 5,000 people, showing some clips of the upcoming Episode 3, and then tricking them and revealing the name of the new movie. Because for Star Wars fans, the name of a movie means a lot.
Yes.
And when that is released, there's just all kinds of buzz. So I got up there and said, I'm going to tell you something very important now, and opened an outer shirt that I had and was wearing a Revenge of the Sith shirt. And I said, this time George promised us he's not changing the title. And I said, and by the way, at the Lucasfilm exhibit on the floor, Star Wars Shop has these shirts in stock now. And there was this mass exodus out of the room.
Yes.
And the Comic-Con people said, I wish you would have warned us. We almost killed some people. But the excitement in that room was just, you couldn't bottle it. I wish you could. And that was
that's cool.
Just paying fans back for being there and for their enthusiasm about Star Wars. And it was just a great experience.
I remember a friend of mine was at that Comic-Con at that presentation, and he talked about the shirt reveal. Yeah. Is there something we didn't ask you about Star Wars that you feel like you'd like to add?
I think we covered the ground pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think you did a good job.
Oh, thank you. I honestly, I could go another hour, and I know we can't, but I'm so kind of honored and thrilled to be talking to you about this, because it's just a wealth of information that I think is amazing. Like, you've done so much. In a sense, you are the genesis of the modern day collector. Not only did you start collecting, but I honestly feel like you paved the road of what collecting is, and this guidepost for all of us who were starting their collections when Star Wars nostalgia hit us back in 92, 93, 94. And you've lived this kind of, you've had these incredible experiences of not just being a fan, but being a fan of it, but also being a part of it, like a creator within it. And after everything we've talked about, could you kind of say, what does Star Wars mean to you?
Well, Star Wars changed my life 50 years ago. And I've never looked back. It changed my life in so many ways and opened up friendships around the world. I've met fantastic people. So Star Wars, to me, at its roots, is the sense of community that has developed around it. And I help some of that along, but it's more than giving back what I put into it.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for coming.
You're quite welcome.
It's just been, it truly has been a wonderful experience. This is one I'll remember always. Before we go, where can people find you?
Well, you can go to ranchoobiwan.org, and we post occasional blogs from our directors and docents. We have news about Rancho Obi-Wan and the Saga Museum. You can donate. You can buy a membership, which helps us maintain the collection. And you can book tours on there. We sell out usually 6 to 8 weeks in advance, so plan well.
Yes.
Wow. Very cool.
And I apologize. One more ambush question. Rancho Obi-Wan. Why Obi-Wan? Why? Why did you choose Obi-Wan as the representation?
Well, Obi-Wan is my favorite character in the Star Wars, the first 6 movies, played by 2 amazing actors who really lent a lot of gravitas to the movies and were really responsible in Episode 4 for sending Luke on his way and opening up a whole new world to Luke. So Obi-Wan has really been important to me. And he was the mentor, and I've been a mentor in my careers as a journalist and working at Lucasfilm.
Amazing. Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
You're quite welcome, both of you.
And may the Force be with you.
And with you.
Zoom, zoom, zoom. That's my super technical cut sound for Dave at the end of our
episode. It sounded just like a Ben Burt sound effect.
Right?
Zoom, zoom, zoom.